Hello everyone, Rhonda back here again, and I thought it would be fun to do a book tag. So I went looking and I found the Finally Fall book tag. Now I found it on stargazeronline.com and also on a blog called talknerdybookblog.com, and I've also seen it other places on YouTube as well. And from what I could tell from looking at what other people were saying, it was originally created by Tall Tales YouTube channel, but it doesn't look like that channel is active anymore. But I thought it would be fun to do the fall book tag. So the first one is, in the fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. So for that one, I chose The Dry by Jane Harper. This is one of my favorite books of the year so far. I gave it 5 stars. And one of the things that I love about Jane Harper's writing is how very vivid her settings are. This is set in Australia during a severe drought. The main character is a federal agent named Aaron Falk, and he looks into like monetary sort of crimes. That's what his specialty is. But in this book, he ends up going back to his hometown where he grew up and left as a teenager. He and his father left the town due to some things that had happened. This book follows Aaron as he goes back to the small town because his best friend growing up, a guy named Luke, has apparently murdered his wife and his son. But Luke's father doesn't think that Luke was actually the one that did it, and so he essentially tricks Aaron into coming back for the funeral and then looking into what actually happened. So in this book, you've got dual timelines. You actually have a triple timeline because you're following Aaron in present day as he's looking into what's going on. You're following the events that happened just before the murder. And then you're also following events that happened when they were teenagers. But the thing about this book is that she describes this scenery and everything so vividly, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like you could feel the heat and the dryness and everything to do with the drought that was going on and just the effects that it was having on people and everything. It was just so vividly described, and I love her writing for that. So next up was number 2, Nature is Beautiful, but it's also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written, but also deals with heavy topic like loss or grief. So I actually had 2 books for this one because I was trying to find books that I'd given 5 stars to for most of them, but I also included a 4-star in this one as well. So the first one is my 5-star one, and this is an old book, but this has always been one of my favorite books, and that is Who Has Seen the Wind by W.O. Mitchell. This is a classic. It was originally written it's a Canadian classic. It was originally written in copyright 1947. So it was originally written in 1947, and it tells the story of a young boy named Brian O'Connell who grows up in Saskatchewan on the prairie. And essentially it's a coming of age story. It deals with, he lives in a small town during the Depression. And so you're seeing all kinds of things to do with childhood in the prairies during that period. You're seeing how people were dealing with the depression and the stress and everything. You're seeing how this child goes from being innocent to coming of age. It's a really well-written story, and I love his descriptions in it. Like his description of the prairie at the beginning of this book is one of my all-time favorite pieces of writing that I've ever read. It's just so well written. I just love that description. And this book does also deal some with grief because I believe it's Brian's father that ends up passing away. So that's part of his coming of age and everything as he grows up, and learning to deal with that grief and learning to kind of all of a sudden be thrust into the position of being the man of his house, when he's just a small child, because the story begins when he's 8 years old, and then follows him as he's growing up. So that's a really, really good one. I love that book. It's been a long time since I read it. I'm due for a reread again. Then the other one that I wanted to mention that was really good that I actually read this year and I gave 4 stars to was called Sweet Bean Paste. This is a Japanese translation. It's by someone named Durian Sukagawa. And this story follows a man named Sentaro. And he is dealing with life issues. He ended up having some major problems. He was in prison. And when he got out, he got a job working for this man making what's called sweet bean paste. It's dorayaki, I think is what the thing is called. It's like sweet bean paste wrapped in a pancake or whatever. So he's dealing with that and the fact that his life has kind of gone not the way he wanted it to. And one day at his little shop, a woman shows up. She's an old woman. Her name is Toku. And she has crippled, disfigured hands. And she asks him if she can help him. She wants to make the sweet bean paste. And, she doesn't even want much money for it. She just wants to have a job. So, Sentaro, first of all, brushes her off, and then eventually he ends up getting her to help. And through the story, you learn Toku's story and what happened to her and why she's disfigured, and you get a lot of discussion on grief and loss and how you can overcome it in certain ways and everything. And it was very, very well written. I really enjoyed the book. I actually cried at the end, which I don't normally do when I'm reading that kind of a book. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was very, very well written. So number 3 is Fall is Back to School Season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. So for this one, I went with one that I listened to on audiobook this year, and that was How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis. This one I gave 5 stars to as well. And it's a really interesting book because she is essentially telling you how to make progress in your life and start looking after the small things when you've been battling mental illness or depression. And as someone who deals with that myself, I often struggle with trying to make things, trying to do even just the simple chores around the house sometimes when you're in a bout of depression and that sort of situation. And she just gave really good practical advice. It was largely aimed at people who have, mental illnesses or people who are neurodivergent, which I also am. And just really practical ways that you can take steps towards, a lot of it was focused on cleaning, but cleaning and organizing and that sort of thing so that you can make yourself feel better. But it also, I really liked the fact that it also, she was big on the no judgment thing. There's no judgment for not being able to do something when you're in a situation like that. And that was something that was really important for me as well when I was listening to the book. So I actually want to buy that one so that I can go through it and highlight things because it was a very, very good one. Question number 4. In order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, or friend group you'd like to be part of. So for that one, I decided to go with another one of my favorites of the year so far, and that is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library. This is by Michiko Oyama, and it is another Japanese translation, and I gave it 5 stars as well. This book follows a group of people from various situations in life, and they all find themselves in a small community center in Tokyo where there's a little library. And the reference librarian, her name is Sayuri Komachi. And she is a really, really unique person. She can look at the person that is asking her a question and figure out what they really need. And often it's not what they're asking for. So each of these people from these different walks of life, and they're all in different situations where they're struggling, and each of them finds their way to the library and is asking her for reference books on a certain subject. Like one of them is trying to learn a new card game, one is trying to learn computer skills, all sorts of things like that. And she prints out a list of books for them, and always at the bottom of the list is one book that just doesn't seem to fit with all the other ones. It's something strange or unusual. But each of these people ends up taking that book out and reading it, and somehow that helps them in their life and helps them to move forward. And I just think that that little community center with that little library would be absolute heaven for me. Of all the fictional characters that I have met, I would love to actually in person, in real life, meet someone like Sayuri. She just is such a unique character, so insightful, and I just know that she would be able to take, problems and stuff that you're having in your life and give you advice on how to move forward. And so that's why, for me, this was an extremely heartwarming book, and I would love to be part of that community center. So that's why I picked that one. Next up is number 5. The colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. So I went through my books and I found some that remind me of fall. And that is this little stack here. So I'll just hold it up here for you. Because for me, fall is reds and oranges and browns. I love fall colors, especially the oranges and reds. They're my favorite, but I think that the brown sets them off nicely. So this is my little stack. I have on here a Jane Harper. This is The Lost Man, which is a new one that I haven't read yet. I have The Black Dove by Steve Hawkins-Smith. That's, I think, about the 4th book, or it might be the 3rd book in a mystery series set in the Old West. I have Dry Bones by Craig Johnson. That's one of his Longmire series. I have The Penguin Book of Norse Myths. I have Don Quixote, which is a classic that I really want to read. I have this one here, which is called Secrets of the Fearless by Elizabeth Laird. That's I believe it's young adult, and it's about a young boy who gets pressed into service on a ship in the age of sail. So that looks super interesting. And then I have Song of the Vikings by Nancy Marie Brown, which was another 5-star for me this year. And this one follows the story of Snorri Sturluson, who's the Icelandic chieftain and poet who brought us the sagas that we now get all of our Norse myths from. So that is my stack of very colorful books. It's for fall. All right. Next up, number 6. Fall is the perfect time for some storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein someone is telling a story. So for that one, I went with another fun favorite that I found this year. And that is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. And this book I gave, my Goodreads rating was 5 stars. I believe this one was 4.5 for me. But I was going by Goodreads ratings as 5 stars. I bumped it up to a 5. This one is told by Ernie Cunningham, and it is very humorous, but also a lot deeper than I was expecting. I was expecting the humor. I wasn't expecting it to get quite as deep as it did. This one was just it was a very fun read, and he, as the writer of the story, Ernie, breaks the fourth wall all the time with you, which really worked in this style of book. Like he's talking about, it starts out with, he says, everyone in my family has killed someone. Some of us, the high achievers, have killed more than once. And he that's how it kind of starts. And he goes into, he's talking about, he says, he's talking about the rules for detectives, and he says, that that one of the biggest rules is to play fair. And he says, actually, I'll prove it. If you're just here for the gory details, deaths in this book either happen or are reported to have happened on page 14, page 46, page 62, a twofer on page 75, and a hat trick on page 81. So he's breaking the fourth wall. So he's, telling you, that you're reading the story as he's telling it. And his character is just really fun, and I like the story. But like I say, it did end up being quite a bit deeper than I was expecting. So this one follows Ernie and his family. His brother has just gotten out of prison after a 3-year prison stint for murdering a man. And he is getting released from prison, and they're all getting together at this ski resort to welcome him home. The problem is that Ernie's testimony is one of the things that sent his brother to prison. So there's a lot of family tension that happens because of that. So you've got Ernie, you've got his brother, you've got Ernie's ex-wife, you've got his brother's ex-wife, you have his mother, his stepfather, and his stepsister, and they're all at this resort, and there's stuff that's going on, and then when they first just at the beginning of the story, there is a dead body found on the ski slope, and the person was killed in a manner that is reminiscent of a serial killer from the recent past. So they are all there, and they end up getting snowed in, and that it's somebody is the murderer at the ski resort. So it's really interesting. It's a fun read. It's, like I say, deeper than I thought it would be, and I love the way the story is told with breaking the fourth wall. So that was why I picked that. Now, let's see. Number 7, The Nights Are Getting Darker. Share a dark, creepy read. So for this one, I decided that I would pick episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. Now, I read this one earlier this year. I can't remember what. I know what I read it for. It was for my vlog where it was all mixed media, stories told through mixed media. And I'll put a link to that one up in the corner and at the end of the video. But I read episode 13 for that, and the story follows a paranormal investigation team. They have a show called Fade to Black, and it's the people who run it are Matt and Claire Kirkland. They get an opportunity to go to this old mansion that was once the home of the Paranormal Research Foundation. And mysteriously in, I believe it was the 1970s, everybody disappeared that had been there. And so the place is rumored to be haunted, and the paranormal team goes to investigate. So you're getting the story through transcripts, through journal entries, all those sorts of things. It's all told that way. There's no extra exposition in it. And it was just such a unique story for me. Just because I hadn't read that kind of thing before. And I don't normally read a lot of super scary stories, although I've started doing more. I've been reading some ghost stories and things this fall. But that one really scared me. It freaked me right out. And it was going to be a 4-star for me until like the very last scene. The very last scene was just like, what? My jaw dropped, and that bumped it up to a 5 for me. So that one was a really good read, and it was definitely creepy. Very creepy. Number 8. The Days Are Getting Colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. So I decided to pick 2 for that, just because the first one isn't actually short, but it is so, for me, it is so heartwarming that I had to mention it. And that is The House in the Cilan Sea by T.J. Klune. This book was another one of my top ones of the year. It was so good that when I was done, I was just like, hug the book. Such a good book. This book follows a guy named Linus Baker, and he is a social worker in this world where he works for the department in charge of magical youth. He's 40 years old. He lives by himself with his cat, and he has a very quiet life. He doesn't really want anything to change. He's very by the book. He has the book memorized. And he's been doing his job for a long time, and he thinks he's doing good, but he also doesn't know what happens, after his job is done, his job of investigating these orphanages where these magical children live. And he doesn't know what happens to them afterward if, he gives an unfavorable report or those sorts of things. That's not part of his job. That's not on his level. So in this world, all the magical children are taken away and put in these homes, which are essentially like orphanages. And they're looked after by this Department of Magical Youth. And then what ends up happening in this book is that Linus gets summoned by the extremely upper management, and he gets sent on a special mission. He has to go to this island in the Cilan Sea and investigate a home where some of the most dangerous magical children live. And he's supposed to look into it and see if it is even safe for them to exist and be there. So Linus goes off on this journey, and he ends up meeting the master of the orphanage. His name is Arthur Parnassus. The two of them strike up a friendship, and he starts to learn more about the children. And it becomes so heartwarming because you really see Linus grow. You see Arthur open up. You see the children open up, and it is so heartwarming. And I just love this book so much. And the sequel came out this fall, and I can't wait to read it. I've ordered it in at the library, but I'm waiting my turn. And then when it comes out in paperback, I'm going to buy it. But I just found this to be such a good story. It's a love story. It's a found family story, and so heartwarming. So I had to mention that one. And then the other one that I wanted to mention is a short, heartwarming read. And this is another one that I haven't reread again in a lot of years, but I used to love this book. I've read it several times. And that is The Kite by W.O. Mitchell. Again, another old W.O. Mitchell book. But W.O. Mitchell was one of my all-time favorite writers when I was younger. And this one was published in 1962. I always enjoy reading this one. It's quite a fun book. It follows a journalist. His name is David Lang, and he is coming out to a small Alberta foothill town to interview a man who has just turned 111 years old, and his name is Daddy Sherry. So he goes to this town, and he wants to interview Daddy Sherry and talk about the past. And instead, he ends up discovering things about himself through the story. The town is trying to celebrate Daddy Sherry's birthday and trying to come up with a gift for him and everything. And he ends up getting involved, and he finds out a lot of things about himself. He's a very lonely person, and he learns a lot about himself, which I just really, really, really enjoyed this book. I've read it several times, and again, it's another one that's due for a reread. Next up, we have number 9. Fall returns every year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. So for that one, I had to go with The Wisdom of Donkeys, Finding Tranquility in a Chaotic World. This one is by Andy Merrifield. I read this book for the first time quite a while ago. I think it was shortly after I moved to the farm where we got our first donkeys. This one was published in, let's see here. Well, the writing is copyright 2008, but the foreword is copyright 2010. So first paperback edition was in 2010. So this book is a very calming, relaxing read. Essentially, it's a nonfiction story, and you're following Andy Merrifield as he sets out on a journey walking through France. And he goes on a walking journey with Griboulet, a friend's donkey. And they go across southern France, and the story is just Andy walking with this donkey and contemplating literature, science, truth, and beauty, and the universality of nature in the French countryside. And he's observing the donkey as he goes and learning things about himself and about life from the donkeys. And as somebody who loves donkeys and who really believes that they hold the entire history of the world in their eyes, like if you look in a donkey's deep eyes, you just see the entire world history. And it's like they just have so much wisdom and knowledge. And they're such special animals. They are very, very special animals. So in tune with your emotions and with just life around them, and so unassuming, so calming. I absolutely adore donkeys. They are actually my favorite animal. And this book to me is like a donkey. It is very calming. It is very full of interesting wisdom, and you learn a lot of lessons about yourself when you read this book. So that's why I picked this one as one that I want to return to soon, because it's been too long since I last read it. I've read it several times, but it's been too long since I last read it. And then the final question is number 10. Fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. So I thought I would just tell you about a couple of them. One of them is I have a fuzzy blanket that has alpaca fur on the bottom of it that I just love. I actually got that one when I was working at the power plant, and it was like a safety award for, I can't remember, a certain amount of time without any injuries in our plant. And so we got those blankets, and I just love that blanket. I pull it out as soon as winter hits, and like to sit under it when I read. I also have my kitty neck pillow, which you guys have seen in lots of my videos. And of course, my most cozy reading accessory is my warm fuzzy cats. I love reading with one or two cats on my lap. I usually have, when I'm reading in the evening, usually I have Oscar and Ollie on my legs. And when I'm reading during the day, I always have Raven on me. And I just love having my warm fuzzy cats as my favorite cozy reading accessory. So there you go. That is my finally fall book tag. And I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what some of your answers for these questions would be, what your favorite fall books are, and if you have any interesting answers to the questions that would give me ideas of books to read. So I will see you guys soon on my next video. Bye.